Chapter 388, Triumph 2. The Lionheart Clan. The illustrious descendants of the Great Vermouth. The continent's greatest warriors. It was a family that every aspiring knight dreamt of serving under. Naturally, the knights of the Lionheart family were formidable. The Knightly Order of the White Lion Knights was a group of knights serving directly under the main branch of the Lionheart family, consisting of individuals whose skills were too prodigious to be mere soldiers of a single family. Moreover, their numbers were also comparable to the knightly order of a respectable kingdom. The Black Lion Knights existed as a separate entity from the White Lion Knights. Unlike the White Lion Knights, the Black Lion Knights were comprised solely of the members of the Lionheart family. A few years back, the Black Lion Knights had been a group of select elites numbering less than 100. Yet, after a rebellion within Black Lion Castle, they underwent substantial reorganization and their ranks swelled. "Good heavens," Straught II said out loud. His eyes widened in astonishment. Even at a cursory count, the number of warriors belonging to the Lionheart family outnumbered the Keel Empire's White Dragon Knights. It was an overwhelming force that, if rebellious, could challenge not only the Keel Empire but even the Holy Empire as well. "Did they always have such numbers?" asked Straught II. "It seems they've brought every force they could muster." "I see about 100 without the emblem of the White Lion, and they might be apprentice knights," answered Alcester. It was just as Alcester deduced. Gilead immediately rallied his family's entire strength after hearing news about Iris becoming the Demon King in the Southern Seas and her subsequent subjugation by Eugene Lionheart. He left behind the bare minimum to guard the Black Lion Castle. Even the elders who were long retired armed themselves and followed the main branch's summons. Moreover, it wasn't only the apprentice knights of the White Lion Knights who were mobilized, but also those from the collateral lines of the family not yet inducted into the Black Lion Knights. Gilead, too, had taken measures against unforeseen circumstances. Though it seemed unlikely that the Demon King of Incarceration would intrude, it was impossible to know what repercussions would follow the first Demon King's subjugation in 300 years. No one knew how Helmuth would react. "Are our borders secure?" Straught II inquired after clearing his throat. The Lionheart family enjoyed several privileges from the Keel Empire. In return, the Lionheart family offered several things, one of which was guarding the southernmost border of the empire, the Uklas Mountains. "Yes. We are maintaining the necessary forces to keep it secured," Gilead responded. "There's no need for concern on that front," Ivatar, who had been standing at a distance, interjected. He approached with long strides, then gave a slight bow to the Emperor and Gilead. "I am chief of the Zoran tribe Ivatar Jahav," said Ivatar. The idea that a forest barbarian could speak so fluently took Straught II by surprise. He regarded Ivatar with a raised eyebrow. "It's been a while," responded Gilead. He recognized Ivatar. Though brief, they had exchanged greetings when Ivatar last visited the Lionheart estate. Moreover, not long ago Ivatar had delivered a significant amount of spoils from the war to the Lionheart mansion. "We've yet to bring the entire forest under control from the chaos, but we've dispatched warriors to the border on our side. There'll hardly be any movement from the Samar forest across the Uklas Mountains," Ivatar declared confidently. Though not an absolute guarantee, the words of a tribal chief on the verge of unifying the great forest bore significant weight. Straught II sensed the deep ties between Ivatar and the Lionheart family and composed his expression. He might not have liked the young chief or the savages, but personal feelings had to be set aside for the empire. "Thank you for your cooperation. Though we meet today in a place like this, we've not gathered solely for such discussions. Chief Ivatar, once the forest issue resolves, let us formally convene for discussions," suggested Straught II solemnly. "It should not take long," Ivatar responded with a grin. Ahem. "Given the long journey you all undertook, I suggest, rather than standing here, we should move indoors." Osiris tried to calm his startled heart and beckoned everyone inside once again. Save for the sand scorpions of Nahama, the best knightly orders of the continent were assembled in one place. Moreover, the garden of the royal palace was filled with powerful rulers who could easily brush off the authority of the Shimuan royal family. More than 1,000 were gathered. But it couldn't be considered a mere 1,000. Even a fraction of them could overthrow Sidoru, the capital of Shimuan, and seize the palace. The more Osiris realized this unbelievable fact, the the more he felt a sinking dread. Though he urged them while breaking out into cold sweats, not a single soul was moving. At the risk of being disrespectful, I must ask, a young man with a cross-shaped greatsword on his back stepped forward while speaking. He was a young boy in appearance, seemingly stunted in growth. Nevertheless, he held the position of commander of the Blood Cross Knights of Uruz, the strongest knightly order of the Holy Empire. His name was Crusader Rafael Martinez, and his youthful eyes were devoid of any gleam as he stared intently at Osiris. "Does Shimuin worship evil?" asked Raphael, seemingly out of the blue. What do you mean?" responded Osiris with an incredulous look. "Do you mourn the death of the Demon King?" pressed Raphael. "Why this sudden?" Osiris was completely flabbergasted. "Your Majesty, I'm inquiring if you and your royal family are heretics," Raphael asked bluntly. He didn't hesitate a second in delivering the shocking words. Osiris' jaw dropped at the blatant, nonsensical accusation. "What in the heavens are you talking about?" he asked in disbelief. Osiris was genuinely taken aback. Had it been any other knight, he would have been outraged. But Raphael's identity as the Blood Cross Knights commander held him back. The Pope was watching them intently, which only added to the immense pressure. "Didn't your Majesty decree the formation of the task force that defeated the Demon King?" inquired Raphael. Yet your face is fraught with anxiety," continued Raphael, not allowing even a moment for Osiris to speak. "That's because your Majesty must have heard the news of the Demon King's demise way before we arrived. We observed the citizens of Shimuin as we traveled to the palace. They are jubilantly preparing a celebration in honor of the subjugation," noted Raphael. Why then is the royal palace of Shimuin so silent? Eugene Lionheart, the hero chosen by the light, has defeated a Demon King. Why is there no rejoicing in this palace?" questioned Raphael. His barrage of questions was relentless, and he spoke without rest. Osiris wanted to reply at every turn, but Raphael's continuous tirade gave him no chance. "I acknowledge my questions may be impudent. Yet your Majesty's complete lack of visible joy raises questions. And that is why I must ask. Do you perchance grieve the Demon King's demise? Do you worship the Demon King of incarceration who rules over Helmuth? Is the entire royal family ensnared by evil?" Raphael pressed on while taking another step forward. Though his frame was small and youthful, Raphael's eyes blazed with a fervor fueled by his deep faith. Such claims are preposterous. King Osiris finally managed to eke out a retort. Then, it was Pope Aurius who now spoke, offering a benevolent smile and tracing the symbol of sanctity across his chest. "Let us jointly prepare a grand reception for the hero's return." Osiris stared in stunned silence as the situation took unexpected turns. "I have not come all the way to this nation for idle chatter within your palace walls. Isn't that true for everyone who is here?" Aurius questioned while looking around. One reason everyone had brought their elite troops was to counter any unforeseen movement from Helmuth. However, that wasn't the only reason. The Demon King's vanquisher was the hero chosen by the light, Eugene Lionheart, and the saint Christina Rogerus. The Pope had grand plans to publicize this great feat to the entire world. He would declare the tangible grace and presence of the light in the world. "Our wizards will prepare the fireworks," declared King Daendolf of Arath, seizing the momentary silence as an opportunity. To be honest, Daendolf had no intention of engaging in extended dialogues with the Emperor or the Pope within the palace confines either. "If there's heavy lifting to be done, just say the word," Amon said with a chuckle. "Not just me but the Fangs as well. They're basically useless unless it comes to brute strength." From the moment the Pope mentioned a reception, the atmosphere shifted instantly. Discussions erupted regarding the festival's preparations. Osiris felt cornered. He was no longer in a position to deny anyone from the festivities. He could not say that he had not thought of celebrating because of how wary he had been of Helmuth. It was especially true with Raphael glowering at him, his eyes still burning with that unnerving intensity. It felt as if he was ready to swing the cross-shaped greatsword as soon as Osiris even breathed the word Helmuth. We shall undertake all necessary security measures," Osiris finally managed after a while as he wiped away cold sweat. As they had done with their departure, the group used magic to accelerate their voyage. As a result, the travel time was reduced by more than half. What a spectacle, Eugene remarked with his arms crossed atop the mast. Shimuan's main island, Shutter Island, was coming into view. Even from this distance, its bustling vibrancy was evident. During their journey, they had encountered Shimuan's military ships and trade vessels. All heralded the preparations for a grand festivity in Shutter as they fired celebratory cannons into the skies to salute the heroes. The military ships even assembled their crews on deck and had them saluting with shouts of loyalty. Feels like old times, doesn't it? Sienna giggled after flying up to him. 300 years ago, after defeating the first Demon King, they had briefly returned to the continent for rest and resupply. The kingdom of Zurfin, now a member of the Anti-Demon Alliance, had thrown open its city gates in a grand welcome for the heroes. Do you remember the palace ball? Sienna said with a bittersweet smile as she dived into her memories. The world had been desperate 300 years ago and hadn't placed much hope in Vermouth and his comrades, mainly because the demons and the Demon Kings far surpassed human strength. Yet against all odds, the hero and his comrades had returned after slaying a Demon King. Even though the Demon King had been of the lowest rank, the fact remained that they had slain one of the world's most formidable adversaries. It had been a glimmer of hope in an era overshadowed by despair. Those nobles back in the day, they were always putting on airs. They were so keen to be associated with us. Remember how they were hounding us just to share a dance? Sienna remarked. Yeah, I remember. There were lines of noble ladies dying to dance with me back then, Eugene quipped. You think it was any different for me? Retorted Sienna. That's why I danced with you, said Eugene. It's too much work to even turn them down, so how about you and I just dance with each other? Are you already drunk? Sienna had slapped Eugene after saying that. Eugene chuckled as he reminisced about the moment. Thinking back, you really didn't know how to dance at all, Eugene said. How could I be good when I had never danced before? And do you think you danced any better? Retorted Sienna. 3 centuries back, Hamel was a peasant and had lived the life of a mercenary. Dancing wasn't a skill he'd picked up along the way. Likewise, having grown up amidst elves in the forest, Sienna had never been taught to dance. Now I dance quite well, Eugene declared confidently while puffing out his chest. Being a Lionheart meant he hailed from one of the most prestigious noble families. As such, Eugene was trained in the arts and etiquettes of nobility from a young age. This included dancing at grand balls. I still can't dance, Sienna replied with a sidelong glance at Eugene. During her time in Aroth, Sienna rarely attended parties. And on those rare occasions when she did, not because she wanted to, she never danced. It doesn't matter. I'm a good dancer. I lead well. Just hold my hand and follow. Eugene spoke without much thought, but the words had a profound impact on Sienna. Her eyes widened in surprise. She instinctively stepped back, her lips parting slightly as if to ask, Are you asking me to dance now? She quickly composed herself and shut her mouth. She did not want to offer Eugene an opportunity to awkwardly make excuses and refute her words. That can't happen, Sienna resolved to herself. She maintained her calm demeanor and took her place beside Eugene. Meanwhile, their ship neared the island and preparations for docking were in full swing. Boom! A celebratory cannon fired from the city. Brilliant magical fireworks illuminated the sky even in broad daylight. One after another, the cannons colored the skies while wizards directed the flames to form letters in the sky. To the hero Eugene Lionheart and the wise Sienna. Eugene shut his eyes, choosing not to read the grand display. Even so, the letters continued to form in the air. The Pope is here, Christina observed, eyes narrowing at the adorned harbor. Rows of holy knights stood in formation with the Pope visibly among them. Among the most eye-catching were the tens of battle clerics, the elite unit Graceful Radiance. Each member had been handpicked by Anise and Christina and trained by Raphael. I see their game now. They wish to flaunt the prowess of Graceful Radiance and showcase what Eurus has prepared for the saint, Anise mused. Graceful Radiance was a select group within the Luminous Covenant. They were essentially fanatics who were willing to throw away their lives at the word of the hero and the saint. Their numbers were still limited, but by the time of war they would have multiplied many times over. They hadn't been mobilized during the battle against the Demon King of Fury, but one day they would be. Their very lives would fuel the assault on Babel. Seal swallowed hard while gazing out at the harbor. There were countless individuals in sight. It was a display of the Lionheart's full might. The sight of her family members made Seal's heart race. "Our fathers are there," Eugene grumbled while taking his place beside Seal. Beside Gilead stood Gerhard, who was donned in formal attire and even armed with a sword. Eugene chuckled and whispered to Seal, "My father. He's probably forgotten how to even wield that sword." Seal didn't respond. "Why are you so tense?" Eugene lightly tapped Seal's shoulder. "Maybe I should have worn an eye patch," Seal grumbled while pouting. Her left eye was a different color and she felt pretty self-conscious of it. "Idiot, that would draw even more attention," said Eugene. "It would be great if magic could change it." She had already made multiple attempts, but even Sienna's magic could not alter the color of the demon eye. Moreover, changing the right eye to match the left made both eyes appear too dull and even more conspicuous. "Stand tall," Carmen mumbled while placing a cigar in her mouth. She stood tall beside them. "You have returned after vanquishing a demon king. The Emperor and the Pope stand there to honor and celebrate you." She turned his gaze to Eugene. "You the Black Lion, Eugene Lionheart." Eugene stared at her mutely. "Look at the sky," Carmen instructed, swelling with pride as she stared upwards. Following suit, Eugene looked up to see the hero Eugene Lionheart. Above the glowing magical letters, the emblem of the Lionheart family was being painted. "The Great Lionheart," Carmen declared with fervor. She thumped the left side of her chest where the family emblem rested. "The Great Eugene Lionheart," she proclaimed. Eugene's mouth was agape at this point. "The Great Black Lion." Eugene coughed, almost choking on his own embarrassment. No matter how many times he pondered, he could not help but think that Carmen was purposely teasing him. Chapter 389, Triumph 3, Bridges extended toward the moored ships. It appeared as if they were carved from crystal-clear glass. These ornate bridges floated through the air and moved with magic. With dozens of ships anchored, there were equally many bridges. But even though the bridges were moved by magic, the structures were solid. How ostentatious! Only a week had passed since the announcement of their victory over the Demon King of Fury. Such preparations had been made in only a week. Suddenly, a carpet unfurled over the crystal bridge. Though the sky still showcased a magnificent light show of magic, it was impossible to hear the sounds of the loud fireworks like before. Clap, clap, clap. A smattering of applause started, initiated by the Emperor, the Pope, and the kings. Soon, the knights that had accompanied them and the citizens behind joined in. In only a moment, the harbor echoed with thunderous claps. "You should descend first," Ortis, who had led the victorious forces, approached Eugene and whispered, but not without a deferential tone. "The victory over the Demon King was mostly due to your efforts, Sir Eugene." Even so, you are the commander of the expedition, Sir Ortis," Eugene retorted. However, Eugene isn't denying the fact that he deserves the most credit for the subjugation, thought Ortis. Ortis shook his head. "I may have held the title, but I did little that befits it. I did nothing as the commander of the expedition during our time at sea. If I were to descend first, not only the members of the expedition but even the esteemed guests would see it as a mockery. Had it been in the past, Ortis might have coveted the glorious spotlight, but no longer. The brutal battle against the Demon King of Fury had matured him. Still, he thought, I should follow after the Great Lionheart, the wise Sienna, and the Saint. Even though he may have matured, a person's nature wasn't so easily transformed. In the first place, Ortis preferred being second or third, blending in rather than taking the lead. Very well, Eugene resigned, making a face that said he had no choice. In fact, he was intentionally making such a face. Even in his fragmented memories as Agaroth and his time as Hamel, Eugene had always loved being the center of attention. He liked being recognized, preferably by many. Yet he never overtly showed this. He had feigned indifference. He would be downplaying compliments outwardly, but in reality he would secretly and quietly revel in them internally. "Liar," Mare grumbled. "You pretend not to care, but you fume when others disregard you, Sir Eugene. You work hard to maintain your face and secretly bask in your own praises." Mare's observations were to the point. "It's natural for people to bristle at disrespect," Eugene countered. "If you just take it, you become a pushover." "You say that, Sir Eugene, yet you endure it when it's from Lady Sienna and Lady Anise," Mare observed. "That's because I'm conscientious and kind-hearted." Their lives became bleak because I was because I died like a complete idiot, said Eugene while sneaking glances at Sienna and Anise. He felt a twinge of guilt. So, Eugene pondered, it's all right if they mock or belittle me. I know they don't genuinely think of me that way anyway. With a smirk, Mare replied, well, that's true. Both Lady Sienna and Lady Anise might tease you, but the moment you turn serious or wear a stern expression, they're always looking for your opinion. In critical decisions, they always defer to your judgment. It's because I put myself on the line physically more than they do, Eugene reasoned, thinking back to their early battles. It had been the same 300 years ago. Anise and Sienna were more attuned to supporting roles rather than directly engaging in battle. As such, they would often rely on the strategies of frontline warriors like Vermouth and Hamel. And why do you always dismiss Sir Molin's opinions? Mare prodded. That idiot. Whatever we suggest, he was always rushing ahead blindly without any thought, Eugene scoffed. You might embellish your own achievements, Mare teased, but you never do for your comrades. Annoyed, Eugene said, what are you even saying? Brat. In my life before the last, I was basically the greatest, but my name is only barely remembered, isn't it? And look, I did so much in my last life, but history only remembers me as the stupid Hamel. They think I'm a historical idiot. Eugene clenched his fists. He was frustrated with being painted with such a skewed representation. Well, of course, I did act a little stupid. It's true that I died like an idiot, but that's too harsh. Well, Lady Sienna and Lady Anise probably never imagined that you would be reincarnated, right? Mare asked. Eugene responded with a sigh. I'm telling you that they're probably rotted to the core. Anyway, all I know is that now I have to work hard since I'm known as an idiot. But what about Molin? That dimwit was still recorded as the brave Molin. Mare couldn't find the words to respond to Eugene's rising ire. Instead, she simply clicked her tongue. To think that such a petty human was once revered as the god of war in the distant past. Well, being a good warrior had nothing to do with being a petty man. This lady thinks benefactor should receive a fair evaluation. Rhaenyra suddenly chimed in. Oh my, don't even try. I can see right through you. Don't think I don't know you're trying to win Sir Eugene's affection by fawning over him. Mare retorted. Mare and Rhaenyra began to bicker inside his cloak. Eugene terminated the connection with the two and composed his expression. Upon looking to the side, he noticed that Christina, or rather, Anise, was giving him a thin, sidelong glance. What conversation were you having in your head for that long? She inquired. Ahem. It wasn't anything important. He deflected the question, adjusting his uniform as he crossed the bridge. It had been too pathetic of a topic for him to explain to her. The luxurious, fluffy carpet led him all the way to the harbor. However, his destination couldn't really be called a simple harbor anymore. The anchored ships from before their arrival had been relocated and the necessary facilities were cleared. The harbor was transformed into a grand plaza bathed in the brilliant, cascading lights from above. Despite the bridges connecting to all the ships, no one had ventured across yet. Instead, there were thousands of eyes, those belonging to the survivors of the battle with the Demon King of Fury, as well as hundreds of thousands of eyes from the gathered crowd, fixated on just one man, Eugene. Eugene hesitated, searching for the right words. Thank you all for coming. In the past, Eugene had always relied on Vermouth to make eloquent speeches in such situations. Thus he had often been and was at a loss for words. As such, he ended up saying whatever came to his mind. Yuawa. A roar of cheers greeted his brief acknowledgement. Amon, the Beast King, was the only one among the monarchs who joined in with a cry of his own. Ivatar and the natives of Samar Forest stood close to Amon. They not only shouted but also stomped their feet and danced to a rhythm, their movements a celebration of the moment. The Pope's eyes, filled with faith, were fixated on Eugene and Christina. He raised both hands. With a resounding clash, the Knights of the Blood Cross Knights drew their weapons skyward and pointed them heavenwards in unison. The sky, previously adorned by the wizards of Aroth, suddenly filled with a divine light. The shimmering particles of light intertwined in the sky, forming into feathers. High above, angels appeared and sang hymns and sounded their trumpets. Kaya. Melkith too spread out her hands while screaming alongside the citizens. Tap tap tap. She started tap dancing and the Earth Spirit King responded to her wishes. The ground rippled like waves and various attention-grabbing structures rose around the square. What is she trying to achieve? Eugene pondered as he descended from the crystal bridge. The Pope began his approach as he saw Eugene's descent. But as the Pope neared, Eugene extended a hand. Later, Arius, the Pope and the leader of the Church of Light, stopped in his tracks, confusion evident in his eyes. Yet he felt no anger towards the abrupt interruption. Eugene Lionheart. He is truly a godly man, the Pope thought. The Pope had once doubted both Eugene's claim to be the hero and the authenticity of the current saint. All the popes knew that the divine humans throughout history were fakes. As was with the current Pope, most of the stigmata that the previous popes and cardinals had been etched with were fakes. Moreover, the saints had been a product of man. However, the saint of the current era was different. Although she had been created as the imitation incarnation of light, she had truly received a stigmata. The 8 wings she had showcased were irrefutable proof that she was looked after by the light. In addition, Eugene Lionheart's identity as the hero and his divine nature had been proven through his conquest of the demon king of fury. I understand, the Pope responded before bowing and retreating. This humble gesture from the most powerful religious figure on the continent left the onlookers in sheer disbelief. Why is that cunning old fox acting so subserviently? Emperor Strahd II pondered while stealing a glance in his direction. Is it possible that Does he also know that Eugene Lionheart is the reincarnation of the stupid Hamel? Even if Eugene was the hero, it didn't make sense for the Pope to act so politely. Naturally, the Emperor never imagined in his wildest dreams that Eugene and Christina had once charged into the Pope's residence and put a blade to his neck. He never imagined that Christina had slapped the Pope. As such, the Emperor stood in place without attempting to approach Eugene. His initial plan had been to publicly shake hands with Eugene, acknowledging his feats as a citizen of the Kiel Empire in front of the masses. But thanks to the Pope making a move first, the Emperor could avoid losing his face. King Daendolf of Arath and Honien were smart enough to remain quiet and still. Naturally, Melkith did not seem to care even a little about such things. With a burst of excitement, Melkith raised her arms and attempted to fly toward Eugene and Sienna. However, she was abruptly stopped in her tracks by Lovelian and Eurydice, who grabbed her from each side with a horrified expression. Eugene ignored the commotion and gazed at the gathering of the Lionheart clan. Beside them now stood Carmen, Seal and Desra. He slowly moved to where the Lionhearts were gathered. His steps were measured and his expression was unreadable. What should he say? He had kept everything a secret, including his travel to Shimuan and his participation in the expedition. From the perspective of his family, Eugene had suddenly left the mansion as always, then suddenly reappeared in the southern seas after defeating the Demon King of Fury. He had often taken actions that surprised his family. But even Eugene felt that he might have taken it too far this time around. Just look at them. He saw the elders from the Black Lion Castle, distant relatives from the collateral lines, whose faces he hardly recognized. There were also the familiar faces of the White Lion Knights in their entirety as well as the novice knights. I'm sorry for worrying you, Eugene started. Do not say that, Gilead interrupted Eugene with a stern expression. Eugene, you've done nothing that warrants an apology. Gilead suddenly approached him and placed a comforting hand on Eugene's shoulder. We were taken aback by the sudden news. But as the head of the Lionheart family, I couldn't be prouder of you. The Lionhearts were the descendants of the Great Vermouth. Anyone bearing the blood of the Lionhearts should perform acts befitting a hero, even if they may not be the hero, Gilead declared. If the newly crowned Demon King from the Southern Seas had proven to be an impossible figure to negotiate with, an existence with whom peace and coexistence could not be achieved, there had been no alternative but to subdue her. The Lionhearts must lead the charge in such a battle. Gilead truly believed this, and had he known earlier he would have participated in the battle without hesitation. Thus, Gilead was immensely proud of Eugene. His recklessness didn't concern Gilead. Eugene's actions were righteous, both as the hero and as a member of the Lionheart family. Why would you need to concern yourself with the opinions of the family? With a sardonic smile, Gilead removed his hand from Eugene's shoulder. From the moment the Demon King of Incarceration recognized you as the hero, you became the representative of the Lionheart family. The moment he acknowledged you, we, the Lionhearts, existed for you. As was the case before, if Eugene ever wanted to become the head of the Lionheart family, Gilead would step down without hesitation. Eugene could take his place as the head of the Lionheart family whenever he wanted. If Eugene wanted, all of the Lionheart family would take arms and carry out his will. If he judged that a war was necessary, the Lionhearts would step onto the battlefield. This wasn't just the sentiment of the head of the family. Klein, the chief elder of the family, nodded, and both the white and black lions saluted Eugene with respect. Deep respect. Trust. Eugene felt respect and trust from the Lionheart Knights, as well as reverence and admiration from the Pope and Holy Knights of Uruz. He felt the emotions spreading to even the knights of other lands. He could feel that the masses looked on with admiration and aspiration beyond the boundary lines. He unconsciously placed a hand over his left chest. The white flame formula. Within the universe dotted with countless stars, he felt a light growing from its depths. It was a diminutive light that seemed to be growing larger. His divine power, which had been hardly recovering, surged. Right, this is what it feels like. Eugene lowered his hand from his chest and looked up. He saw his father, Gerhard, whose eyes brimmed with tears. Behind him stood his guard, Layman. He looked at Eugene with eyes full of emotion. "Thank you for those words," Eugene said while bowing his head slightly to Gilead. Then he approached Gerhard. There was a moment of realization. He had been Ogoroth in the past. Moreover, he still held all his memories from his time as Hamel. Yet Eugene truly regarded Gerhard as his father. It was impossible for him to not view him as such. He still remembered vividly the softness in Gerhard's eyes as he was cradled as a crying newborn. He remembered the warmth of his father's touch. The sound of Gerhard's laughter still rang true to his ears from the time he spent as an infant, the times when he could not control his body well. When his frail mother passed away, Eugene felt profound pain despite having clear memories from his past life. There were times when he wondered if he had robbed them of their dearly awaited child. The guilt and pain of never calling her mother weighed heavily upon him. Upon his mother's death, Gerhard had wept profusely while holding the hand of the infant who had barely outgrown his cradle. Gerhard never remarried and single-handedly raised his baby boy. He catered to every whim of his child, a fact that Eugene was well aware of. "Why do you shed tears so often, father?" queried Eugene. For this, Eugene considered Gerhard his father and addressed him as such. "Goodness, why do you cry every day? It's not like someone beat up your son. And our family head said I did nothing wrong," continued Eugene. "It's because I have a son who exceeds all expectations. I'm just so proud," responded Gerhard. "Huh." Eugene chuckled softly and embraced Gerhard. "If the son is exemplary, surely it reflects on the father too, right?" Since early childhood, Eugene had been taller than Gerhard. After patting his father's back a few times, he glanced ahead. He was taken aback. There stood Ancilla and Cyan, both looking surprised as they gazed upon Seal, realizing the difference in her eye colors. They didn't say anything but just stared at her eyes. Gilead, too, gazed at Seal with a slightly open mouth. Feeling the gaze of her family, Seal offered an awkward smile and began to move forward. "It's my fault," Eugene confessed after releasing his father. "While trying to protect me." "No, it's not. I moved of my own accord," Seal interjected hastily. Gilead was the first to recover from his surprise. He alternated his gaze between Eugene and Seal before giving a subtle nod. "Seal," Ancilla whispered her daughter's name in a soft voice. Her steps faltered for a moment and Cyan supported Ancilla in alarm. However, Ancilla gently shook her head and refused Cyan's aid. Ancilla Canes was the mistress of the Lionheart clan. The Lionheart's proudest moment in this era was undoubtedly now. Ancilla didn't wish to appear weak in front of all those who had gathered. Standing tall with pride, she approached both Eugene and Seal. "You aren't hurt anywhere else, are you?" she asked. "No, mother," Seal responded in a faint voice. Up close, the disparity between her mismatched eyes became more pronounced. Ancilla gently touched Seal's cheek with her hand. "I am so proud of you, Seal." Ancilla too was born into a family of warriors. Her family had been a military clan for generations, and it was not uncommon for her to witness a seemingly healthy relative return from the battlefield injured. She had braced herself for such familiarity when she married into the Lionheart family. Marrying into a family of warriors meant she might someday face such trials. She had mentally prepared herself, but the reality of the situation weighed heavily on her heart. Eugene had explained that Seal had been injured while trying to protect him. Yet even so, Ancilla couldn't harbor any resentment towards Eugene. Seal's actions had been just. Had Ancilla been in that situation, she too would have believed that she ought to act as Seal did. No, she would have hoped to act with such bravery. But faced with such a moment, would she truly have sacrificed herself to save another? I am truly proud. Ancilla extended one arm and pulled Seal into a comforting embrace. And you too, Eugene. With her other arm, she drew Eugene close. Though surprised, he didn't resist Ancilla's gesture. Both Eugene and Seal quietly nestled into her embrace. Chapter 390. Triumph 4. To be honest, Eugene had been half expecting to receive a slap. While he hadn't believed Gilead would resort to such actions, he had thought Ancilla might have both the right and the inclination to do so. Initially, Eugene's impression of Ancilla had been that of a typical noblewoman who had been married into a family as the second wife. Full of ambitions for power within the family and bent on raising her offspring with a strict iron hand to realize her aspirations. But it wasn't long before he realized she wasn't just some blinded, ambitious noblewoman. Ancilla had a knack for distinguishing friends from foes. If she found someone too challenging to handle, she made sure to forge ties, turning potential enemies into allies. After adopting Eugene, she imparted this wisdom to her children, ensuring they never antagonized him. Moreover, she never acted badly towards him as well. All that had been nearly a decade ago. The fierce Ancilla of yesteryears had since mellowed considerably. The fact still remained that even during her fiercer days, she wouldn't have slapped Eugene over such a matter. Perhaps I wasn't prepared enough, Eugene murmured with a rueful smile. He had distanced himself from Ancilla's embrace a while ago while Seal was still engaged in a conversation with her parents. What kind of preparation? Cyan queried with a quizzical tilt of his head while standing by Eugene's side. Eugene watched Seal being consoled by Gilead as he replied, I thought she might blame me for Seal's eye and give me a few slaps for it. Eugene, what exactly do you think of our mother? Cyan probed. It's all your fault that I have these misconceptions. When you were younger, you used to return after getting slapped by Lady Ancilla, Eugene replied. That was a long time ago and it was because I was often mischievous. But this situation is different. Even as he said that, Sin couldn't help but glance at Seal, his face etched with concern. There aren't any further complications, right? He asked. I've used every method at my disposal to check and she's fine, assured Eugene. I guess it should be considered fortunate, Cyan said, heaving a sigh. His face contorted into a mix of relief and unease. He knew the sequence of events. Seal had shielded Eugene and lost her left eye in the process. If it had been left in that state, she would have lived the rest of her life with an eye patch or a prosthetic eye. Were it not for a certain intervention. A demon eye, is it? Well, in that aspect, I guess it's fortunate that Seal is a Lionheart, Cyan spoke earnestly. Demonies did not manifest in humans. Meaning Seal was the first human with a demon eye in the history of the continent. Were it not for her lineage, the Inquisitors of the Holy Empire might have apprehended her, or wizards from Aroth could have captured her for study. But neither the Kiel Empire nor Aroth could impose their will on the Lionheart family. No. It's not just because we are the Lionheart family, Cyan mused internally, it's because of Eugene. He had spent several days in Shimuan. Since then, Cyan had come to realize the monumental influence that the name Eugene Lionheart held across the entire continent. Even the Pope had acquiesced to Eugene's words just a little while ago. How was the Demon King? In an attempt to shift the topic, Cyan asked while clearing his throat. Felt a little strange. There was a thought Cyan often pondered in the past. Even if he wielded a sword all his life and strived with all his might, he thought he would never reach a position equal to Eugene's. And whenever despair threatened to consume him, that damned half-brother of his seemed to possess an uncanny ability to discern it and would relentlessly pester him. He would rile Cyan up and taunt him with stinging blows while using sparring as an excuse. But regardless of how fervently Cyan swung his sword, the gap in prowess between him and Eugene always remained undiminished. Strong, Eugene responded while scratching his chin. He was gazing intently at Cyan. Eugene had accomplished grand, unimaginable feats, and as such he should have been a distant figure. Yet Sion never felt the distance between himself and Eugene. Eugene always felt close. No matter if he was the hero or the slayer of a demon king, or even if their parentage was utterly different, Eugene was a brother to Sion. "It's only natural," Sion remarked, a playful grin on his face as he draped an arm around Eugene's shoulder. While the whole continent admired Eugene's accomplishments and revered what Sion couldn't achieve, jealousy wasn't what he felt. It was an odd sensation. Perhaps as a child he might have felt envy. But now, have I given up? Sion pondered. No, it was a different emotion. Sion's sword was still aimed at Eugene. He yearned to someday duel with Eugene as equals. That fervent desire remained as a roaring blaze. Yet alongside that longing, there was deep respect and affection for Eugene. "Don't overthink it," Sion told himself with a mental shake. The emotion he felt was relatively simple. He felt great pride in his accomplished sibling. "You brat, why are you acting this way?" "It's unsettling," Eugene grumbled while playfully jabbing Sion in the ribs. As the Lionhearts conversed among themselves, Sienna was with the group from Arath, and Christina was with the people of the Holy Empire. Neither particularly wanted to engage in conversation, but their counterparts were insistent. Sister, why didn't you call me for the battle against the Demon King?" Melkith whined while insistently clinging to Sienna's arm. To Sienna, Melkith was, honestly, quite burdensome and overwhelming. Sienna always found it challenging to deal with such overtly barefaced and shameless individuals. Particularly unsettling was the fact that Melkith El-Haya was a genuine fanatic. "She's not like Carmen Lionheart," Sienna observed. During her journey with Carmen, Sienna had come to realize that Carmen was sensible despite her quirks. Carmen had been the voice of reason, displaying seriousness when necessary and showing deep reflection after the battle against the Demon King. Her admirable character earned the respect of many, including the knights like Ivik Slad. But what of Melkith El-Haya? Even the king of Arath and Lovelian, who had some inkling about Sienna and Eugene's secrets, treaded lightly around Sienna. Yet there she was, addressing Sienna as "sister," and whining, making a huge scene in front of a crowd. What further caused Sienna to break out into goosebumps was the realization of Melkith's talents as a wizard, especially in spirit magic, despite appearing to be a goon and an utterly crazy woman. Simultaneous contracts with 3 spirit kings. And as a pure wizard she's reached the 8th circle. These realizations truly astounded Sienna. Such capabilities were almost a divine error. Perhaps the gods are fair considering she seems incomplete as a human, Sienna wondered. While Sienna's feelings towards Melkith could be described as a form of self-loathing in a sense, she never equated herself with Melkith. Sister, for your sake I could jump into the earth, fire or even lightning," Melkith passionately declared. Of course. You have contracts with the spirit kings of earth, fire and lightning," Sienna replied hesitantly. "Ah, sister. You remember the spirit kings I've contracted with?" "Yes, that's right. I've contracted with the spirit kings of earth, fire and lightning. But I'm scared, sister. What if I must enter a storm for you?" "Sadly, I cannot enter a storm. Of course, if you wanted me to, sister, I would leap into one, even at the cost of tearing myself apart. But if I die doing so, it would be pointless." Sienna struggled to comprehend the onslaught of words. They made absolutely no sense. She regretted ever allowing Melkith to address her as sister. "You seem displeased," Pope Aurius observed. While Sienna grappled with Melkith's words, Christina faced the Pope. With Raphael standing beside him as a guardian, the Pope drew close to Christina. In this context, Raphael was more than a mere bodyguard to the Pope. At Christina's command, this true devout fanatic of light would not hesitate to strike the Pope down. In Raphael's eyes, the Pope's authority was no higher than Christina's. Although that would never happen if Sir Eugene demanded, Raphael would even attempt to kill the saint, the Pope thought with a bitter smile. There was no one in the Holy Empire with greater prowess than Raphael. Even if all of the Blood Cross Knights tried to kill him, Raphael would survive. In any case, the Blood Cross Knights would never heed an order to exterminate their commander. Each member of the Blood Cross Knights had dedicated their life to faith through extreme training. They would never think their commander, the Crusader, would turn his back on the light. As such, they would not heed the order to kill their commander, even if it came from the Pope himself. The Holy Empire's power structure was peculiar. While the Pope was the ultimate religious leader, in the end the true power rested with the will of the light. Previously, when they were both fakes, the Pope had no need to heed the saint. But the fount of light had been destroyed at the hands of the hero. Their god, who had previously illuminated the Holy Empire with the light regardless of their actions, left hundreds of knights and inquisitors, as well as Cardinal Sergio Rogeris, to die at the hero's hand. And the saint had now spread her 8 wings. She had even more wings than the most beloved angel of the light, as mentioned in the scripture. The two of them know. Even if Christina alone ascended the skies of the Holy Empire with her wings spread and proclaimed that the Pope had betrayed the light, the people would have thrown rocks, torn the papacy down, and burnt him at the stake. "Your Holiness, your intent is so overt and messy it's unsettling," Christina commented coldly. The Pope responded with a hint of surprise. "You address me as Your Holiness. If I showed Your Holiness any less respect in front of all these people, everyone would surely find it both amusing and strange," Christina responded frigidly. "Heh, but I truly am an amusing, odd and grotesque old man," the Pope said, sounding as if he wasn't talking about himself. "Even Your Holiness' self-deprecation sickens me," Christina said flatly. "Please feel that way, Saint Rogeris. You and the hero Eugene successfully vanquished a demon king. During the collapse of the Fount of Light, perhaps I could have twisted the will of the light and justified myself, but now I no longer can," the Pope said as he removed his hat and placed it over his chest. "Perhaps you should end this wretched old man's suffering and take over?" he suggested with a hint of resignation. "Did you approach me to hear an answer to that question?" Christina inquired, her eyes sharp. "By the light, I swear. I never acted out of selfishness. I foolishly misconstrued the will of the light, believing I was doing what was necessary for the sake of the kingdom of God," the Pope confessed with a heavy heart. A tense silence ensued. After a bit, the Pope was the one to speak again. "But no. I realize my actions and those of the preceding popes in shaping Euras as the kingdom of God were misguided. So should not a true chosen of the light, one blessed with the divine spirit, rightly guide and govern Euras?" he asked. Christina regarded the Pope intently. Regardless of whether he was sincere or not in the current circumstances, the Pope had no power to refuse her. "No," Christina slowly shook her head. "Neither I nor Sir Eugene wish to rule over Euras." The Pope remained silent, taking in her words. "So, Your Holiness, continue in your role as the Pope," she advised. "Pardon me, Saint. But do not be mistaken. Although Your Holiness must remain as you are, you mustn't act as the representative of the light's will, nor even try to interpret it," Christina warned. Christina's gaze bore into him, searching for any hint of insincerity. "Do you understand? I will heed your words," the Pope replied without a hint of displeasure, nodding solemnly. Christina then turned her attention to the rear, where a battle-ready clergy unit stood. They were prepared for the saint. Members of graceful radiance composed the holy symbol on thin air when they saw her. "As you likely know, Your Holiness, times are changing," Christina began. "Yes," the Pope replied. "A crusade is imminent. The exact time is unknown, but you must prepare for it," Christina said sternly. "Yes. During the preparations, please do not hinder Sir Eugene," she advised. "We shall gather the martyrs," the Pope responded. "Among them, pick those who are especially devout and prepared. Supplement the graceful radiance with these picks," Christina said in a voice quivering with a mix of determination and pain. The graceful radiance was a suicide squad. From its inception, it was designed to be so. Both Anise and Christina had concurred and pursued this design. For ages, Euras' faculty of divine magic researched miracles and developed new ones. They had created a faux divine saint, mass-produced relics through her, and even advanced the development of holy lands. Anise and Christina had returned the relics that the department held to the light through sacraments. They had also sent back chimeric holy weapons to the light and destroyed most of the ongoing research materials. However, they had kept what could be utilized. They couldn't fight against the demon kings of incarceration and destruction by solely following principles. Once members of the Luminous Covenant, the combat priests were bioweapons refined with divine power. Although they weren't comparable in completeness, they were akin to Anise and Christina. For them, Salvation was to offer themselves in the crusade as martyrs for the light. While it was now impossible to mass-produce such weapons, there was still a need to bolster the ranks of the graceful radiance. "Heaven exists," whispered Anise in Christina's tormented mind. Even Anise's voice bore the weight of sorrow. "The light will guide them there." Christina sighed deeply as she nodded in agreement. Eugene gazed upwards with his mouth agape. Before him stood a magnificent lion, radiating a blinding, almost excessive brilliance. It took quite some effort to craft, the king of Shimuan, Osiris, boasted with pride, seizing the opportunity to make a big deal out of it. "You know, the artisans from the Dwarven Guild never collaborate with human artisans. But for this grand march, human and dwarf artisans worked together for the first time. We assisted as well," chimed in Ivatar with a boisterous laugh. "Hauled the wood, cut it and refined it just as instructed." Amon chuckled in agreement. Eugene wasn't sure how to respond. He could not smile. His face contorted with a blend of horror and embarrassment. His fists were clenched tightly. "You might find it unfamiliar, Mr. Eugene," said Osiris. "This is a float. It is used in the Shedder Island Festival Parade. This specific float has its own name." "Platinum Lion," a dwarf interrupted, standing proudly in front of the float. He was stroking his long beard. "The platinum and jewels used on this platinum lion could purchase several castles. And we imbued the magic of Aroth in its construction. Astonishingly, the platinum lion doesn't roll on wheels but walks. Imagine that. Marvelous, isn't it?" he boasted. "Ehem, as he says, Mr. Eugene," Osiris said with a smirk while pointing at the platinum lion. "Climb aboard." Eugene was gripped with horror at these words. "The platinum lion will lead the parade. The streets have been cleared for the parade, and every citizen of the city is eagerly awaiting for it to begin." Eugene just turned his head to avoid Osiris's gaze. Around him were dozens of floats, some newly crafted, while others resembled those from past parades. One thing was clear: the platinum lion outshone them all, standing tall and magnificent among its counterparts. "I would have preferred a dark lion," Carmen murmured from the side, seemingly entranced by the platinum lion. She rubbed her chin thoughtfully while observing the float. Eugene gritted his teeth, holding back whatever retort bubbled within him. Chapter 391. Triumph 5. Eugene always relished attention and recognition, even from his previous life. Whether the praises were genuine or inflated, he accepted them as long as they weren't harmful. But now, after 21 years of life as Eugene Lionheart, 38 years as Hamildina's, and an uncertain period as Agaroth, he came to a stark realization: even he had limits. He was humiliated. This was horrible. The sheer embarrassment felt unbearable. He wished the ground would open and just swallow him up. He wanted to find a hole to hide in. Had he ever faced such a mortifying moment since he was born, or rather since the dawn of his memories? His grip tightened on the railing as his body shook uncontrollably. Should I flee? Eugene considered genuinely. Up, down, right, left. Everywhere he looked, praises filled the air. The sky was ablaze with fireworks, and citizens who came to watch the parade waved flowers and glow sticks while shouting out in joy. Sir Eugene, Bender. Eugene Lionheart. The hero. Their voices drowned out even the booming of the fireworks. People not only lined the streets but also occupied every rooftop in sight. It wasn't only rooftops either. Wherever there existed a space that could be occupied, people had flocked to it. Their figures stretched in an unbroken line all the way to the royal palace. "I put in quite the effort," came a voice from above. Lifting his eyes, Eugene found Melkith Alhaya. She was merged with her signature infinity force, in the form of a giant elemental being. She chuckled while rubbing her nose. "That's how it should be, right? The route for the march should be straight, don't you agree?" Turning here and there through the winding capital streets would have been tedious for everyone. Eugene just decided to stay silent. So the great Melkith Alhaya, the White Tower Master, stepped in. The other wizards did their part. Look, the knights following from behind contributed too. But the one who exerted the most power was yours truly, Melkith Alhaya, she explained with a puffed chest. It wasn't hard to imagine. Melkith had contracts with 3 spirit kings: thunder, fire, and earth. Using the power of the Earth Spirit King, It would not have been hard for her to reshape the very ground and buildings to clear a path from the harbor to the palace. Why do you have such a long face? Stand tall, wear a bright smile and wave to the crowds like this. Melkith suggested before exaggeratedly lifting both her arms and waving energetically. Fortunately, unlike her form in the primeval forest, this spirit giant wore clothing. A dress that seemed to embody both the passion of fire and the zing of thunder. With a flourish, she gathered petals showered from the rooftops and concentrated them over the platinum lion. Eugene was getting more embarrassed by the second. He gritted his teeth. A deluge of countless petals poured from above, but he thought it was for the better. The rain of petals was obscuring the adoring faces around him. Somehow that felt slightly comforting. The innumerable petals meant his twisted expression remained hidden from the crowds. "You enjoy this?" a voice called from his side. Eugene wasn't the only one to have ascended that ostentatiously ornate platinum lion. Alongside him stood figures who might be considered the comrades of the hero, the saint and the arch-wizard. Sienna flashed him a sly grin while flicking her hair back. "You've earned these cheers and praises, my apprentice," she said with a teasing air. "It seems you're accustomed to this, Lady Sienna?" Eugene responded after a slight pause. "Hee, of course I'm used to it. Your beautiful mentor here has vanquished 4 demon kings up to this point. Such processions are familiar territory," Sienna said with a laugh. This parade evoked a spectrum of emotions in Sienna. Some 300 years ago, the parade she celebrated with Hamel had been modest in comparison, reflective of the somber times they lived in. When she returned after sealing the pact with the demon king of incarceration, an even grander parade had welcomed them. Yet none among the 4 heroes had truly enjoyed that festivity after returning. The weight of their responsibilities had not permitted them to. "But now, we can truly enjoy it," she whispered. Her eyes were glistening with tears as she smiled. Even without words, Eugene could sense the tumultuous emotions Sienna was experiencing. The same went for Christina, for within her resided a niece, who was experiencing the same or even greater emotions. Anise had spent her entire life revered as the saint. As such, she was familiar with such adulation. Yet she had never truly reveled in such accolades by herself. For her, the true celebrations weren't ones she experienced as the saint, but rather ones shared with her comrades. Feeling these emotions from Anise, Christina found courage and strength from deep within. Christina also had a desire for celebrations. She had celebrated the festival of faithful Anise's birth by watching the fireworks with Eugene. That had been a great festival, but it wasn't anything as grand as the celebration of a demon king's subjugation. What she was about to do wasn't out of her selfish desires. She was acting for Anise and for Sienna. She suddenly reached out to grasp Eugene's hand. With her other hand, she simultaneously guided Sienna's hand into his grasp. "For victory!" she shouted while raising her hand high. Along with it, Eugene and Sienna's hands soared into the air after hers. Lowering her intertwined hand, Christina shouted again, "For victory!" Caught off guard, Sienna hastily mimicked her. "For victory!" Caught between the two, Eugene quickly joined in their triumphant chant, even if a little awkwardly. "Who?" The crowd responded with fervent cheers. To them, Eugene Lionheart was a figure so beloved that even his slightest gesture would be met with adoration. It was to the degree that he would be greeted with a fervent cheer even if he lowered his pants and defecated in public. Kaya! Melkith also joined in her giant form by lifting her massive arms. The sight of this giant elemental being cheering prompted the entire expeditionary force to echo the sentiment. Behind the platinum lion, Carmen, Seal and Desra were riding on a lion-shaped float. Carmen clasped hands with Seal and Desra before raising their hands and cheering in unison. Further behind, Princess Scalia, with teary eyes of admiration, shouted alongside Prince Jaffer, Ortis, Dior and Maze. Another float carried Ivik, who cheered along with other mercenaries. The procession continued, each subsequent float filled with figures, both from the expedition and esteemed knights from various nations, all joining in the grand salute. "Such blind devotion," the Emperor of Kiel muttered. His face was contorted with conflicting emotions. He wanted to retain his imperial dignity and refrained from joining the raucous cheer. Yet, witnessing the likes of the kings of Ruhr and Arath and even the Pope raising their arms in jubilation, he worried about seeming out of place in the crowd's eyes. With a resigned sigh, he subtly raised his arms. He had to ponder, the balance of power on this continent is shifting. Having slain a demon king, the hero was no longer a mere figurehead. While it was uncertain how this era would unfold once the promise made by the demon king of incarceration ended, but if the oath were to persevere, it would signify the hero Eugene Lionheart's triumph in ushering in an age of peace. If that were to take place, the Kiel Empire could no longer retain the Lionheart family within its boundaries. Even now, the empire was indebted to the Lionheart family and catered to their whims, but it would only worsen in the future. If the hero declared open war against Helmuth, the fanatics of the Holy Empire would rally while shouting martyrdom. Rohr would join in as the descendant of the brave Molin, and the kingdom of Aroth would not defy the will of the wise Sienna. For victory. Surrounded by zealous festivities, the emperor made a resolve. His face was now reflecting a steadfast determination. He raised his arms higher than before. He would stand with the hero. There was a storm of change enveloping the continent. If he wanted to protect the empire, the emperor would need to take the first step to stand behind the hero. Would the hero be able to vanquish the demon king of incarceration and the demon king of destruction? Could the continent, when united, face the demons of Helmuth head-on? The answers were uncertain, but anyone present could gauge the direction the tides of history were turning. For victory. The emperor decided to place his faith in the hero. The resplendent procession concluded as it reached the royal castle of Shimuin. However, the roars of the crowd persisted outside its walls. A few zealous ones, numbering in the hundreds, even tried charging the castle gates or scaling its walls, only to be repelled by protective magic. Wah-wah. Eugene dismounted the platinum lion while ignoring the deafening cheers. "This platinum lion shall be gifted to you, Sir Eugene," King Osiris, who had followed closely behind, said with an obsequious smile. Eugene looked up at the lion with a complicated expression. This glittering float signified more than the sheer value of its materials. It symbolized the journey of this era's hero, from slaying a demon king to leading the victory procession. Considering that Eugene still retained the divine might and divinity of his past self as the god of war, the float had the makings of a holy relic in the future. "You're not suggesting that this is the only token of gratitude, are you?" Eugene inquired after composing himself. The question seemed to catch Osiris off guard as his eyes widened with surprise. "Pardon? Before any feasting, let's first discuss the distribution of the rewards," Eugene said, asserting his position. Heeding his words, the palace's council chamber was quickly filled with many people. Those present included leaders of various nations, including King Osiris, as well as the main players of the expeditionary force. Ordis, Maze, Ivik and Carmen were present as well. "All right then," Eugene began as he entered the chamber, opting to remain standing. He awaited everyone to settle before stepping into a prominent spot for all to see. "It may sound presumptuous coming from my own lips, but from start to finish, I bore the brunt of defeating the Demon King." He cast a look at Ortis, who nodded unflinchingly in agreement. "Mr. Eugene's statement holds true. Without his intervention, we would not have marched against the Demon King. Rather, we would have chosen to return to Shimuin. In our absence, the newly risen Demon King of Fury would have grown stronger while expanding her influence. She would have become almost an insurmountable opponent. Well, it would have been possible to defeat her, though harder. We would have suffered dozens of times compared to our current losses," Eugene continued. "But such a sacrifice would have been borne not just by Shimuin but by the powers of all nations." He took off his cloak and draped it over a chair. "Wouldn't you all agree? None of you leaders would have denied support for subjugating a newly risen Demon King, right? Since it wasn't as if I would have been calling for war against Helmuth." "You are my comrade," Ivatar declared as if he had been waiting for his turn. "If you had called upon me, I would have crossed seas for you, even if I had been alone in my stance. Rohr feels the same. To follow in the footsteps of our kingdom's founder, the brave king, is an immense honor and destiny for me," pronounced Amon. "Rohr feels the same. To follow in the footsteps of our kingdom's founder, the brave king, is an immense honor and destiny for me," pronounced Amon. The king of Aroth started, "As long as the wise Sienna stands by the hero Eugene Lionheart." Pausing at Sienna's displeased glance, he quickly amended, "No. Even without the wise Sienna, the wizards of Aroth who revere her would have rallied for Mr. Eugene. The Pope chimed in, "There are no apostates in Euras afraid of the crusade. If the hero called Aeurius would have become a knight of the Holy Order, dedicated to serving you, Kiel would have acted similarly had we deliberated beforehand," the Emperor of Kiel added. He had already made the decision to trust the hero. Though he declared his support if he was truly placed in such a spot, he would have deliberated numerous excuses. But that was already something under the bridge, and there was no point in thinking of such things. More than anyone, Gilead, seated among the leaders, interjected, his gaze unwavering. "The Lionheart clan would have been the first to follow you." Eugene perceived unshakable trust in Gilead's steadfast gaze. Even if the whole continent were to turn against him, the Lionhearts would stand by his side. With a mix of pride and humility, Eugene chuckled. With such endorsements, rolling up his sleeves and stretching out his muscular arm, he declared, "I would like to boldly lay claim to my due." Letters began to form in thin air before him. "I want to say this in advance, but I won't negotiate with you all. I'm simply making a demand, and I believe I've earned the right to do so," Eugene began. "Shimuin will dispatch the Hammer Island dwarves to the Lionheart estate. All costs related to their work will be covered by Shimuin, and Eugene Lionheart will directly negotiate with the dwarves in regard to which master craftsman will be dispatched. You're free to decline, but I would appreciate it if you didn't. For the sake of our continuing good relationship," he added. "Shimuin will erect statues of the hero in the central parts of its two largest islands, Shedder and Larupa. These monuments will not be commercialized for tourism. Similarly, a commemorative gate celebrating the victory over the Demon King will be built. Likewise, it will not be commercialized for tourism. After the statue's construction, the royal family will hold a Thanksgiving ceremony in front of them once a month." "What?" Osiris exclaimed, his mouth agape. "The royal family paying tribute to a statue? Moreover, in Shimuin, which wasn't even a theocratic state. Deifying the hero." The Pope was taken aback. He snuck a discreet glance at Christina, who was sitting nearby. Noticing his gaze, she gave a subtle nod as a signal for him to remain silent. "If you do not like it, you don't have to comply," Eugene continued nonchalantly. "No, it's not about liking it, but," Osiris began. He recalled their earlier conversation. If he wanted, Eugene Lionheart could mobilize the armies of multiple nations. But even without the military might of the nations, Eugene alone could have brought Shimuin to its knees. This isn't a request but a threat, isn't it?" Osiris ventured cautiously. "I didn't intend it that way, but if you perceive it as such, there's little I can do." Eugene's eyebrows quirked slightly. "Really now, the word threat sounds so distasteful. Do you genuinely believe that's what I'm doing?" "Well, no, but," King Osiris was interrupted. "Am I really threatening your majesty? Did I not clear out pirates on your coastlines on your behalf? Did I not defeat a demon king? And yet you accuse me of such? This is truly, truly disheartening," Eugene said. "Did I ask for the throne? No. I simply asked for 2 statues for my efforts and for someone from the royal family to occasionally give thanks. Is that too much to ask?" "No. Oh no. But then why are you raising your voice at me?" Eugene interrupted once more. Beads of sweat began to form on Osiris' forehead. He was cornered. Before he could muster a response, Princess Scalia, who had been sitting beside him, stood up abruptly. "I will do it," she declared. "Scalia?" Osiris gasped. "I will do it. On behalf of our kingdom, representing our royal family, I will offer tributes to the hero's statue," she shouted eagerly. Her eyes were burning with determination. The raging fire in her gaze was undeniable. Both Osiris and Jafar were stunned into silence with their mouths agape. They could do nothing but stare at the fervent Scalia. "Very well," Eugene responded. He was not the least surprised by Scalia's intervention. He'd expected as much. He began to list his subsequent demands without waiting for Osiris's reply. "Regarding the spoils we've collected this time." He wasn't greedy for them in the least. His only demand was that they were to be divided fairly and transparently according to people's contributions. "I asked to borrow 2 of Shimuin's national treasures. The exits," he demanded. "What? Excuse me." Osiris sputtered. "You already possess 3 of them, do you not?" Sir Ordis uses one, and to be frank, there's no real user for the remaining two. It's not like your majesty is going to don them for battle either, right? Well, if you decide otherwise, I will promptly return them. I can promise, continued Eugene. Osiris' face reddened to the point of near combustion, his breaths short and ragged. The exits? The treasures crafted from the heart of dragons, symbols of Shimuan's royal lineage? And Eugene wanted to borrow too? Why not simply lend them? The Emperor of Kiel remarked with a sly grin. As Mr. Eugene stated, Osiris, you won't be wearing an exit onto the battlefield. To speak so lightly of another nation's treasures. Osiris shot a glare at the Emperor. The light would surely delight in the offering, the Pope commented with a benevolent smile. That word, offering, made Osiris' heart flip. Offering? Whose permission gave it that status? Fine. Oh, I'll lend them, Osiris conceded. He was overwhelmed and outnumbered. He sank back into his chair while replying in a feeble tone. These were things Eugene believed he rightfully deserved. And lastly, Eugene began, knowing this was pushing his luck. Didn't you all say earlier? If I had asked for help with the Demon King's subjugation, you would have supported me without hesitation? With a confident smile, he continued, doesn't that mean, in essence, you would uphold my requests using royal decrees?